Welcome to a bunch of MCNs from autumn 2002. Look at these bad boys. And one in particular, I've scanned some of these. October the 2nd, 2002, pages 8 and 9, and a little feature in MCN where the headline is "You've Changed My Life," and that was the MCN where MCN announced to the world that I had won the Road Test Idol competition. So yeah, I've been a road tester at MCN now for 20 years. Doesn't seem like 2 seconds. And the way I got the job was really surreal, really bizarre. And it did change my life. Exactly what the headline says. I used to work for a sign manufacturer as a project manager before MCN. I've always loved bikes. I used to race when I was younger. So basically, in a nutshell, I started riding when I was 16. MB5 was my first bike, then an R80, then an LC 350, a string of other bikes. I raced from 1988 to 1994, starting off in Proddy 750 racing on a slingshot. Then I went to a Proddy RGV 250 and then a Super Sport 600 FZR 600. And it was going really well. And then in 1994, I had a big crash on the road and broke my legs quite badly. Got a load of nerve damage, including drop foot. And that stopped me from even riding for a long time. And I didn't ride from 94 to 2001, which was just a year before I started at MCN. But I think it's quite an interesting process, this whole road test idol thing. So what it was, I've scanned a lot of these MCNs. We've got archives at work, as you can imagine. I've got almost every single MCN I ever appeared in up until a few years ago when Bauer kind of pulled all the content into a content hub, and then my stuff went everywhere. So I would have been collecting magazines and MCNs all over the place. But I've got all the early stuff, apart from there's a few missing, which I've scanned at work. So the idea of MCN was that they needed a road tester. I think a guy called Jim Yardley had left. I never met him. And working at MCN road testing at the time in 2002 was Mark Potter, who was the road test editor, who went on to be the news editor and then the editor. And now he's resides over Potsky Media, a really successful PR company. I guess he was a mentor in a way. And there was a guy called Keith Farr, who was a proper news hound and a really good rider and writer as well. And then they needed a new road tester. So rather than advertise it in a normal way, they thought they'd spice things up a little bit and run it as a competition. So these were the MCN days where it was massive. There was no real internet at that point. It was just at the start. I think they used to sell like 130, 140,000 copies a week, which is phenomenal. It was the Bible. I mean, it still is in a lot of ways, but the way we consume our media now is completely different. And we sell about 40, 45,000 a week, which is still a lot. But obviously you've got your YouTube channels and social media and website and apps and all that kind of stuff. So they thought they'd not advertise a job. They'd run it as a competition. And at the time, there was Pop Idol, which was quite a successful talent show for the musics. And so they had the brainwave of changing pop to road test, and they advertised this competition. So the way it started was way back in, where are we? August the 14th, 2002. And you can see, I mean, these, looking back on these MCN, the covers are amazing. So they had a group test then, which was Benelli Tornado, MV750, Ducati 998, RSV. I mean, when you go back through the archives, you could just spend days looking at all the old stuff and So remember that. That's amazing. But I think I was in a McDonald's or a cafe or something in London, and like many people, Wednesday was MCN day, and I remember excitedly buying MCN like I normally did, follow mainly the racing news. I used to read it from the backwards front. I guess a lot of people still do. And I saw this cover, Ride Fast Bikes for a Living. And, I guess a lot of people like me, as they were growing up, wanted to, who had a passion about bikes, wanted to ride bikes for a living, get paid to ride bikes. I mean, my early dream was to race and earn a living from racing. But, only a very few people ever get lucky to do that. So I always wanted to be a road tester. My idols were, I used to see people like Alan Cathcart ride all the MotoGP bikes, or 500s as they were back then. And in actual fact, the Union Jack on his crash helmets kind of influenced mine. Matt Oxley, absolute legend. Again, he was the first superstar road tester, probably the only superstar road tester there was, with his Taichi leathers and his custom painted Daurai. Look at that, camera's dropping. I've got my phone mounted to the wall with black tack. No expense spared. So, I always wanted to be a road tester. Always thought it was a closed shop. In 2002, I actually applied for a job at Superbike, but I didn't get it. I didn't even get anywhere past a thanks but no thanks letter from Kenny Pride. So in the summer of or August of 2002, this MCN came up, Ride Fast Bikes for a Living, and then there's this advert, win your dream job as a road tester, and it said about, what does it say? One of the best biking jobs in the world, planet's biggest motorcycle publication, 6 weeks intensive journalist training, which they gave me across one of the best regarded training courses in the industry. And that's right, I went on a Peterbolt college scholarship when I first joined, and that stood me in great stead, as did working in a really busy office with talented designers and news people and sub-editors who used to absolutely pull my copy apart and give it back to me with red pen all over it, including my boss then, Stephen Bartlett, who's sadly departed. He used to infuriate me with throwing my words back at me, but I'm so glad he did now. And anyone new starting a job really kind of lacks that, and that kind of skill is gone in a lot of ways, especially with the new media. People aren't really trained up like classic old journos were. A desk, a phone, a computer in an office full of bikers. Well, that was true. A decent wage. That wasn't true. And shares and other benefits. Chance to test the latest new bikes all over the world and make a name for yourself. Well, some of that's true. So there was a coupon to fill in, and it was really random. Just fill in the form, and you have to say 50 words, explain which you'd choose, bikes or sex. So I excitedly filled that in with something really, really cheesy, which I'd cringe at now, as I did with all my early road tests, and send it in, and kind of forgot about it. Then the next week in MCN, they advertised it again, and I'm thinking, oh no, don't do that. More people will enter. And then there was a nice little spread about, there's a lovely picture of Mark Potter on an R1 in Spain somewhere. And I thought, oh, crikey, I'd love to do that. So, and that was that. So after that, I got something through the door, which was a sort of a thanks for applying letter. And I'd been narrowed down to 50 or 100 at the beginning, finalists, out of about 3,000 or 4,000 people, and they'd chosen that through the whole bikes and sex thing. Knowing what I know now about MCN, they probably would have just thrown most of those things in the bin, because there's no way you can tell if someone's going to be any good after 50 words, is it? And you had to send in a picture demonstrating your love of bikes. So I took a picture of my Ducati 916 at Lyddon doing a track day. Some people sent in some rather dodgy pictures of maybe them being a little bit too attached to their exhaust pipes. So as the process went through, I would receive a letter every week from MCN saying that you've reached another milestone. So it went from down to 50, and then I think I had to do a feature write-in little exercise on my best ever biking experience, which was the Nürburgring. Let's move that camera up again. Then it got whittled down to 10, which was then we had to have a road ride with Mark Potter from the office. Then it got whittled down to 5. 5 of us went to the California Superbike School and got judged on our riding, and then it was down to 3, and then our feature was our profiles were in the paper with a telephone number underneath, and it was a public vote. So I got all my friends to ring, and my friends and family. I think they just wanted rid of me from Ramsgate, where I lived. And as the process was going through, you never think you're going to win anything like this, do you? But as I started getting towards the end, I had to start thinking about telling my boss that this might happen. And, I said it probably won't, but I've entered this competition. So as you can see from the MCNs, we were featured every week, and like I was getting my dream. I was having my name in the paper. It was just unbelievable. So that was the final 50. These covers are brilliant, aren't they? Benelli now half price. September the 4th 2002, it was down to the final 25. That was the test that we had to take. Then look at this cover, all the 600s. This is when 600s were a big deal, wasn't it? September the 11th 2002. Then there were 10, and then what is this one? New SV1000. Wow. September the 18th, the almost famous 5. That's when I started to think, wow, this might happen. I started dreaming about meeting Rossi and riding MotoGP bikes and stuff. Amazing. And then with this one, this issue that with the GSXR 1000 K3 on it, September 25th. Look at them bikes, amazing. There can be only one. So that was when that was a little spiel about each of us and the telephone number. And then finally, I remember buying this newspaper in Grange Road in Ramsgate, the newsagents there, and I'd found out I'd won at that point, and I was waiting for the next Wednesday to see it in the paper, and there it is. You've changed my life. So there was a story about the process when I was at Rockingham doing the track assessment. They took that same picture of all of us and used the winner's one in the actual feature. So there's a few of these people cheering on a Fireblade. They didn't actually make it, and I'm holding up Mark Potter's leathers there. And when I found out I won, God, my head was in a spin. I only was able to give work a week's notice because they wanted to put me through this course. The money was, they'd only set aside trainee money for a youngster, and I was 32 at the time, had a really good job, and it was a massive pay cut. But I thought, if I don't do it, I'll kick myself forever, and I'm so glad I did it. At the time, MCN used to run a little, they're called flannel panels, that all magazines have, and it sort of says how to contact the magazine, who the staff, etc. And on that particular week, and also they used to pick out people that contributed to MCN that week, standout contributors, I suppose. They got Carl Fogarty, Stefan Bartlett, my old boss, and then me, introducing me as the new road tester. It was incredible. And then Adam Duckworth's editor column talked about it as well. So absolutely phenomenal. And then from there, I moved from Ramsgate to Peterborough, lived in a hotel for a few weeks like Alan Partridge while I was finding my feet, went straight into this journalism training, news writing, feature writing, design, all sorts. Really, really good. Gave me lots of confidence because I've never written before, only ridden. And then before you know it, I'm sort of 6 weeks in, I'm sitting at a desk at MCN about to live the dream. And true to their word, I didn't start off making a tea. I was straight out testing. Within a year, I'd been to Arizona to do the 04 underseat pipe blade launch, which was actually done at the end of 03. I'd been on my first 600s group test. It's a collaboration between MCN and Bike, Cartagena, and all around the roads around Cartagena and Almeria. I just thought all my Christmases had come at once. It was just unbelievable. It was hard at first doing the road test, not having any real knowledge of any previous model bikes. So, for example, when I did the Fireblade launch, I'd not ridden any other blades. But I think what I did right at the beginning, and I've carried that through, is basically we're critics. We're road testers. We're critics. We're not there to sell bikes for manufacturers. MCN's always been big and bad enough that if you give a manufacturer a bad review and they get all shirty and say we're going to pull your advertising, MCN says okay, off you go. So I've never ever been under any pressure to say anything nice about a bike. All I've done from day one is just give them my truthful opinion, and that opinion can be different to other people's, might be the same as other people's, but it's just your opinion, and that's all road testing ever is. I don't ever think you need to you don't need to be a certain level of rider as such. I mean, I'm a okay rider, but I couldn't win a national superstock race. I probably could barely qualify for a BSB race. I'm probably just a good solid club racer. So there's lots of riders faster than me, lots of other road testers faster than me. But equally, I think if you're a new rider, we've got lots of less experienced road testers in the industry, and I think their opinions are just as valid as the old dinosaurs like me. So I think from day one I was just truthful. I didn't try and say anything I didn't really believe, and that holds you in good stead. Because, for example, if you say something about a bike and it's the best thing since sliced bread, and then 2 years later they bring out an improved version, then you're screwed. You've got nowhere to go with it. So let's put this camera up. Rookie mistake. Let me quickly show you a couple of my first tests. So one of my first tests was, there's me thinking I'm going to go and ride Fireblade straight away, but in actual fact I did a test where, bear with me caller, I should have prepared this really. Right, I found it. The Mr. Flyer makes this look a lot easier than it actually is. I think he prepares, unlike me. So yeah, this is a feature I wrote, my first ever MCN feature with my first ever byline and my first ever bunch of pictures. I was so proud of it. And it was about a ride from Land's End to John O'Groats on some Royal Enfields. Now, this guy called Mike Cater wrote into MCN, said he was raising money for charity so he could go on an Enduro India event. And he was going to ride from Land's End to John O'Groats, visiting all the Royal Enfield dealers along the way. Would we like to cover it? And would we want to send somebody along to ride with him? So they packed me along to Land's End. He had a spare bike. It was awful weather. It wasn't the kind of rock and roll road testing that I was expecting. Freezing cold. And Mike was a great guy, but very eccentric, very enthusiastic, because after about 20 miles, my bike broke. And I thought, yes, I won't have to do the whole trip now. And he mended it straight away. And I thought, oh no. And that was the story of the next 4.5 days it took. It would run, then break, run, then break. Sometimes it would break almost terminally. And then you'd somehow get it back together again. God knows how. But we did it. Our photographer, Mark Weeble Manning, who was a staff photographer at the time, was following on a Pan-European. He always looked so nice and warm and toasty, and we were absolutely shivering on these Enfields. But as the days wore on, I started to enjoy it more. A, because I was being paid to ride a motorbike, and I still don't take that for granted now. You know, I can be road testing on a Tuesday afternoon and still think I should be at work rather than out playing on motorbikes. So, you know, that's how my job's changed my life. You can't put a price on that. And it's all about, the other thing is it's all about the story in this job. It's all very well riding I wander around a racetrack and saying it's brilliant. There's no real story there. The good stuff, the stuff when you're inspired to write, happens when you have a good story. And although on the face of it, riding 2 Enfields from Land's End to John O'Groats when I was 32, and all I loved is racing bikes and sports bikes, it didn't float my boat at first, but by the end of it, I really enjoyed it. And that's what riding is all about, isn't it? It's all about the experiences you have. You know, it's all very well doing a fast lap around a track, but I bet you have more fun riding with your mates, or, you know, going with your girlfriend on holiday or whatever. So it's all about the experiences. And I was so chuffed to have this in the paper, and I've still got this one. You know, it was an absolute life-changing moment. And, you know, seeing your picture and your name and everything in the paper and your writing, that never wears thin. So that was my first feature. And my first road test was an FTR 125 flat tracker. It was a grey import from Honda. And we went to, again with Mark Manning, again in the snow in January, or I think it was January or December. I went to Kings Lynn Speedway track and then rode this FTR round, and managed to do some nice sideways action, which I probably couldn't do now. I could then. I had bigger kahunas. But yeah, that was just again, I'm thinking I'm paid to do this. That crash helmet I'm wearing actually belongs to Weeble. And then at the beginning when I started, Joe Rocket gave me some leathers. But since then, I think 2003, I've been wearing Alpine Stars, which are fantastic kit. And Arai crash helmets for no other reason that they save my bacon every time I crash. I do wear other stuff. Our products pages in MCN are hungry beasts, so we have to test a lot of products to be able to do product reviews. But I really like Alpine Star stuff. So that was memorable, that test, because I still had my little sports bike brain on, and I used to go everywhere in leathers. And I remember riding back from Kings Lynn to Peterborough with vented leathers in the snow, absolutely freezing my thingy off. Now I very rarely wear leathers because bike kit's changed, isn't it? You can have really cool bike kit that looks like normal clothes. So I barely wear leathers on the road now, just on the track. So that really, that was my first road test. Just amazing. So yeah, they were my first few months at MCN. I'll never forget them. It's 20 years ago now. I don't know if they'll be around for another 20 years, or if motorbikes will be, or newspapers will be, who knows. But I'm clinging on. We're all clinging on for the ride. So that's that really. I've been really inspired looking at all the stuff we've done over the years. Is amazing. And maybe I'll pull out the odd road test from my archives and talk through what happened. I know they don't like talking about it, but Mufka and Simon Hargreaves on Front End Chatter, they get a lot of emails, don't they, asking about what it was like working at Martin. Used to be at Bike Magazine, and he was my colleague at MCN. Really lovely guy. I was quite intimidated sitting next to him because he's so intelligent. I could almost hear his brain going when I was next to him. And the same with Simon. Simon is, what I'd say, Simon's hyper intelligent. I'm a little bit of a ugly duckling in the journalism world, in the road test world, because, you know, a lot of these people are fantastic writers. They are really intelligent, really clever, and it's quite intimidating being around them. But yeah, they get asked a lot about what used to go on back in the day. And of course, Simon Hargreaves was PB, wasn't he, with Trevor Franklin, who I was lucky enough to work with along the way. We actually started at MCN at the same time. He moved from PB to MCN, and I moved from a sign company to MCN. They don't like talking about their past exploits with road tests, but I think everyone finds it quite interesting. And you know what goes on behind the scenes we're all mates, despite what people might think, because we work for rival magazines. Well, I hope we're mates. I think we are. You know, even now, 44 Teeth, Superbike, Visor Down, MCN, Fast Bikes, the influencers, the YouTubers, we're all friends. We've all got a common goal, haven't we? We're all common interest. We all love motorbikes, and we're all in a really fortunate position where motorbikes are a big part of our lives, and some of us get paid not handsomely, but we get paid to ride them, and it's amazing. So I might dig back through some of those old road tests and maybe talk about what went on at the time. You know, the launches, some of the launches are just amazing. They're not such fun now because of the amount of work that's generated from a launch. Not that it's like digging a hole or stacking shelves. I still realise what I do isn't really considered work, but they can be tiring days anyway. And, you know, group tests as well. Some of the things that go on at group tests, some of the, you know, back in the day when they were really important to do thousands tests and things like that. Maybe I'll go back through some of the tests and talk about them. Or even, you know, just looking through some of these magazines, it just sort of pulls some pages out at random. Even seeing the adverts, you know, the old adverts and how cheap things were. You know, we got a Simon Crafar Arai for £289.99 from Hein Gerrick. I mean, do you remember all that stuff? Got Neil Mackenzie LC road test there. It's just amazing looking back through the archives, especially as the world's changed so much now. But anyway, I hope I haven't bored you too much, and thank you very much for watching.